Benvenuti a tutti, and welcome to another edition of Italian America Long Island. My name is Dave Anthony Setta-Ducati. Today, we're very fortunate to have a great sportsman and athlete on our show. He was a professional athlete in Europe for 24 years in the Euro League. He won 4 years as a top power forward in France. And I have to say, a very fond connection. Jim Graziano was one of my former students at Farmingdale High School. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dave. It's good to be here.
It's wonderful to see you, and I'm so glad you had such a wonderful career in Europe as a ball player.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your Italian heritage?
Okay. Well, my grandparents, my great-grandfather and great-grandmother came from Palermo, Sicily at the turn of the last century. In fact, we got on EllisIslandFoundation.com, and I've got all the, I know what ship they came over on, everything. And they settled down, they settled in the East Village. They lived on, right off of Tompkins Square Park, 10th Avenue and Avenue A. And my grandfather tended bar all through Lower Manhattan. My grandmother was a housewife, and they raised my father and my Aunt Marilyn.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, did they? I know you got out to Farmingdale somehow. How did that happen?
Moved to Farmingdale in 1959.
Great.
Yeah, we moved there. And
of course, you were an all-star player in Farmingdale.
yeah, I began playing basketball. I never really liked basketball. I preferred baseball. I was a baseball player when I was a kid, Little League. But then I got extraordinary tall. I just grew very, very fast. And by the time I was in 5th grade, I was already over 6 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, so then I walked into a gym, and in fact it was the old Main Street school on Main Street, and kids were playing a pickup game and they didn't have enough to play. So I just started running up and down. I didn't know what the rules were. I knew you had to put the ball in the basket. And then I had some athletic ability, and I continued to grow taller and taller, and things kind of snowballed. And I dedicated probably over 300 days a year, 320 days a year. I would take off 1 month for practice. Other than that, I spent 4 or 5 days, 300 and something days a year practicing basketball. And that was my goal one day, was to become a professional basketball player.
Well, you certainly reached that goal with
Yes.
great honors.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's unusual for Italians to be as tall as you are. My uncle, of course, is very much like you. As I said, he's 6'4". But usually the norm for the Sicilians is more like 5'8", 5'9", 5'10". Yeah. But every once in a while you have that tall Italian gene.
I think it comes from my mother's side. Again, I'm half Italian. My mother was Russian, was a Belarusian, so that's where we think that we get the tall genes from.
Could be.
The Russians.
Tell us a little bit about the path you took to becoming a professional ball player.
Okay, well, it kind of snowballed. After after high school, I had a very, very good high school career. I was very, very highly recruited. I could have gone to any 350, 400 colleges, and it took a lot of work. I was recruited by 6 or 8 schools that I was really interested in, and one of them was the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and perhaps I'll tell that story now. I was away at a basketball camp. It was the summer of 1974. The phone rang. My mother answered the phone, and she said, "Who is this?" She said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "Can I please speak to Jimmy?" And she said, "Well, Jimmy's not here right now. Can I take a message?" And she goes, "Who is this?" And the man on the other end said, "This is Frank Sinatra." And my mother said, "I'm Ella Fitzgerald," and she hung up the phone. And they called right back. Jilly Rizzo called right back. He was Frank's right-hand man. And we got a chance to meet in New York, and we met in Las Vegas. And Frank tried to recruit me to go to University of Nevada, Las Vegas, because he was very close with Jerry Tarkanian. And they wanted to build up the program there in UNLV to become a national sports program, especially in basketball. I didn't want to go there. I wanted to write. I wanted to do some other things. I wanted to get into journalism. I wanted to be a writer as well. So I said no, thank you. And After I signed with the University of South Carolina, Frank Sinatra was in a place called Jimmy Wesson's. It was a famous steakhouse in New York at the time, and it was the South Carolina bar restaurant in Manhattan, the steakhouse. And as Frank Sinatra was walking out of the restaurant, he saw Frank McGuire, who was the coach at the time, had an oil painting at the entrance. And Frank McGuire walked over to the oil painting, took it off the wall, and said, well, if you can have Graziano, then I'm going to take Frank's picture. And Frank left the restaurant, walked into his limousine, and left. Yeah. So that was my recruiting story.
That's
with
really
Frank Sinatra.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, after college, what happened? Was that you were drafted somehow?
Yeah, I was drafted by the Denver Nuggets in I guess in 1980. I went to camp and I wasn't really prepared. I wasn't really good enough. I was dealing with some injuries. I went back to school where I was 9 credits short. So I got my degree in journalism at the University of South Carolina. And January came along and I was off to Europe. I ended up playing in Scotland for a few months, and then I bounced down to Chile in South America. The following season I got an offer in Berlin in Germany, where it didn't really work out, so I went to Belgium, and then from Belgium to France, and France 1983. From 1983 until 2006, I pretty much lived and worked in France. Yeah.
And is basketball very popular over there now?
It wasn't that popular when I went there. It took off in 1992 with the Dream Team, when Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan and Larry Bird, they all went to Barcelona in 1992, and that's where basketball exploded, pretty much all over the world too, in China with Yao Ming. And even today, in fact, basketball is probably, next to soccer, probably the most popular sport in the world. And you can actually see it in the NBA now, with many of the players coming from Europe, coming from South America, coming from different parts of the world. It's really changed.
It's an amazing thing. I've noticed that. I've noticed that in the names of the players.
Yeah.
You know, you have a lot of Croatian people,
Mm-hmm.
and people, of course, from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us a little bit about living in Europe. What was that like, Jim?
It was, for me, it really wasn't a big adjustment, because I was raised, again, in an Italian-American, Russian-American household, where basically a lot of our meals and the way that we lived were pretty much European. So I really didn't have that much of an adjustment moving there. What I really did like, I liked just the way that people lived. It seems like they took their time when they went places. They weren't in a rush to get anywhere, and nobody really gave them a hard time about that, you know, and I really liked it. I wish that we could perhaps do that here one day.
Now, would you ever like to return to Europe?
To Europe, I think so. I'm trying to talk my wife into it 6 or 7 years down the road. I did become a French citizen. I was married there. I have 3 wonderful children who are all older now. But I would like to move back. I would like to move back to either Sicily or France or Spain eventually. Yeah.
Relatives living in Italy at the time?
I have one. I have one relative. In fact, I took a trip with Laura. We went back to Sicily 2 or 3 years ago, and my Uncle Richie did have a contact there. He's a relative through marriage, through some way, and he still lives in the town there outside of Palermo. And we did visit him, and we had a wonderful visit. In fact, when we did visit Sicily, we traveled all through the island, and I really do like it there. I really like Sicily, and especially the real estate. The price of real estate now is very, very attractive. In fact, there are some towns. I read it in the New York Times. There are some towns in Sicily where they're giving people homes for free if they would come there, and within 5 years, if you rebuild your home and get it in order and move in, you can have the house for free. Yeah, in fact, it's happening all through Europe now, Western Europe. There are many towns, small villages that are becoming deserted because a lot of the kids are moving into the cities,
right,
and they're leaving back, and they're leaving and they're leaving their homes.
Well, that sounds like a great opportunity.
Yes.
Well, we have a lot of photos that you brought.
Yeah.
So we saw some of your family already, your grandparents and all. Why don't you tell us about some of these other things? What is this photo about? West Point. What is
West
that?
Point. That was my first. It was kind of like my coming out. I was 8th grader, I think. It was the summer between going into 9th grade that year, and I grew from 6'4" to 6'7". So I was a 6'7" 9th grader.
Wow.
And I played with the Nassau County, what is it, the Nassau County, the Police Athletic League, I think. It was all the police athletic leagues from all over New York State. They had a tournament in West Point. And that's when that's when we started out. We won the tournament, and it was a very, very good experience. And that's pretty much where I started that year. And then the following year, my freshman year, Carl Savalli, the coach at Farmingdale, brought me up to the varsity, and I loved it from the very beginning. I was the 6th man at the beginning, then my career began to snowball pretty much after that.
And this photo you have here, Riverside Hawks. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
It was the summer of 1974, August. Richard Nixon had just started the Watergate impeachment ceremonies and started. There was a guy by the name of George Johnson, who I'm still friends with, went to St. John's and later the Milwaukee Bucks. He got hurt. He's played with a team called the Riverside Hawks, and they needed a center. They needed another big guy. So they asked me if I would like to join the team. And we traveled. We traveled through the whole month of August. We traveled through, we started in Kiev, we went to Leningrad, we went to Moscow, and we played through those cities in a tour. Again, it was the thawing out period. And the following year when they came back, I guess it was pretty much maybe in October and November, we played them at Hofstra University a few times.
And that's the Long Island Russians?
Yeah, it's the Long Island Soviet Union, 1974,
so
where I was the captain of the team, and they came over. And it was very, very good. It was very, very competitive. We had a lot of people at the games. And it was a kind of a thawing out period, I remember. It was kind of a thawing out of the Cold War.
Yeah. So that
We
kind
became
of
friends.
helped to do that.
Yeah, that was a great experience.
Now what's this next one? Syosset, number 10 Syosset.
It was just pictures from games. In fact, that was a picture. That picture was taken when I was voted the top 5 basketball players in the United States. I was on the Dream Team.
Oh, that's the next photo we have.
Yeah, I was on the Dream Team in 1976.
Boy, that's some jump you've got there, Jim.
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
I really like basketball, and like I said, my athletic ability when I was young, I played baseball and football. I had good hands. I could run, and that was a part of it.
Now what's Jim McDonald's? That's the next photo we have.
McDonald's was, well, it was known as the McDonald. It wasn't known as, it was called the Capitol Classic at the time. It was before the McDonald's All-Star Game. McDonald's runs the biggest high school basketball game in the country in May, and I was one of the first Long Islanders to participate in that game. And there's a couple of pictures there of some people that played in the NBA today, or had played in the NBA.
So, you know, you've had so many wonderful opportunities. In your own mind, what are some of the outstanding moments of your career?
My outstanding moments of my career, probably when I was probably in France, maybe in the late 80s. I played with a team called Bordeaux, and when I went there at the beginning, they were on a very, very low division. They were in the 3rd division, and when I went there, we mounted from the 3rd division to the 2nd division, and then from the 2nd division, we almost made it up to the 1st division. But I really enjoyed my playing days in Bordeaux, and I loved the town too. It was a very, very nice place. Other memories that I have too, I was in Dijon for 1 or 2 years in the late 80s too. That was a very, very good experience, and I got a chance to play with some very, very good competition there in Dijon. And that's about it. And of course, in college with the University of South Carolina, it was a wonderful experience too. Playing major college basketball was great.
Getting back to the photos, you had your three daughters on a TV interview? Is that...
No, the TV interview was here. I didn't put them in here.
Okay.
That's a picture of me when I was on with the Frank Sinatra story with UNLV years ago on HBO. There was a special called The Runnin' Rebels of UNLV about Jerry Tarkanian, and that's what they had bought in. They had bought me into there. But yeah, there are pictures of my daughters, the three
Okay.
daughters there in Madrid,
Mm-hmm.
and pictures there in 2006 before I had left.
And this Donnie Walsh photo, what is this?
Donnie Walsh came to my high school graduation party that I had in the backyard. Donnie Walsh was the president of the New York Knicks for 2 or 3 years, a few years back.
Wow.
And he came to recruit me at the University of South Carolina, for the University of South Carolina, and I really wanted to go there. There was many players from Long Island at the time who had gone down there. Brian Winters, Kevin Joyce, Tommy Riker, Tommy Owens, John Roach, all came from the Long Island metropolitan area.
Mm-hmm.
Donnie Walsh was the associate coach there at the time, and he came up to my high school graduation. I think even this was after I had signed. He came up anyway.
And this photo of you with Nebraska, what is that?
Nebraska, that's just another college picture. That was in 1976, either my freshman or sophomore year. There are a couple of pictures there of me in action, and also against the University of Cincinnati.
Uh-huh.
We played them in the Sugar Bowl and the Superdome, which was quite an experience playing in the Superdome.
Wow, great.
Yeah, at the time.
Well, you've been all over the world with your basketball.
Yeah, I really got a chance. It really gave me a chance to travel, and I really liked it.
Now, do you still have folks in Farmingdale?
No. My mom moved out of Farmingdale 20 years ago, 22 years ago, so they're all gone. She's down in Virginia now. In fact, my whole family lives in Williamsburg,
Oh, in Virginia.
in Yorktown, Williamsburg, that area, yeah.
Tell us about the Frank McGuire photo you have.
Yeah, well, Frank McGuire is a basketball legend in New York. He coached St. John's to a national championship in the late 1940s, where he had been to school, and then he went on to coach the University of North Carolina to a championship in 1957. He was the coach of the Philadelphia Warriors with Will Chamberlain when he had his 100-point game.
Wow.
And then he was pretty much at the end of his career. He was in his 70s, and the picture that I have there that you see is from a game that we played for him, where all of his ex-players came back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was played at the Carolina Coliseum back in 1979, I think, or 1980.
I guess we have some more photos of you, but in Chile. Is that the next one?
In Chile.
Oh, no, that's not it.
No. Jim Chile, number
Here's-
16.
Yeah.
Oh, that was in Chile in 1982.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even play for my team. There was like an all-star team, or there was a team that wanted me to play for them, and it was quite a good experience too, because the game was in Punta Arenas, which is the southernmost part of South America. So I flew down there, and there was a shot, as you can see from the game, that I had played there, and it came out of the TV guide. They
Oh.
used it for a TV guide picture.
Great. And
Yeah.
this Villeneuve, what is that?
Villeneuve is the team that I had first played for in France in
Mhm.
1985. That was a picture of me taking a hook shot there in Villeneuve. There's another place I've talking to my wife or my significant other Laura about going back to live. It's a beautiful little town in the southwest of France that I would like to go back there perhaps and live one day. Yeah.
Okay. And next we have Cold Spring Harbor. What is this?
Cold Spring Harbor was my first year coaching when I came back. We didn't win that year, but we had won 2 other years. We were conference champs. I began coaching when I first moved back. I didn't really have anything else going, so I coached. I coached high school basketball, which I really, really enjoyed.
Are you still doing that, Jim?
No, I stopped. I was at St. Anthony's for a few years where I coached the JV. And then after that, no, I run a basketball clinic on Saturday afternoons. Now I'm actually having to look for a place because we lost our lease. But I have middle school kids, bring in about maybe 10 or 15 every Saturday afternoon. We run 8-week sessions with them, and we're looking to start up perhaps again in September with that, so I can keep my hand in the game a little bit.
That's great. Now, how about modern basketball? Who do you like in the NBA?
I don't really. I'm a Knick fan at heart, but as the years go by, I watch the game, and it's evolved a lot. There's a lot of good things about the game. I guess the strength of the players, their size, their physical attributes. They run a lot faster. They jump a lot higher. They shoot a lot better. But I don't really believe in the NBA anymore. I think it's becoming more like professional wrestling in a way, where it's entertainment and it's not even sport anymore, as we can see the problems that the NBA had in the finals with creating the super team with Golden State. But when I do watch basketball now, I do prefer to watch college basketball, you know. And my college team, the South Carolina Gamecocks, went to the Final Four this year for the first time, you know, for the first time ever. Our girls are national champs, which was nice to see. But yeah, I like to watch college basketball. I think it's a lot more interesting. There's really no money in it, and the guys just go out there to play, you know.
And it's really for sport.
And it's for sport, exactly. It's
Now,
for sport.
in Europe, do they treat the athletes the same that they would treat them here in the United States? I mean, here an NBA basketball player is a superstar.
Yeah.
Did you get that kind of treatment?
No, we didn't. Like I said, the game didn't really become that big until 1992. But the whole sports structure is set up differently, pretty much around the rest of the world. This is the only country in the world where we have organized sports in high school. The rest of the world, especially Europe, goes through a club system where, for example, if you move into a town and you have a family and you all like basketball, you would sign up your 6-year-old or 7-year-old boy or girl with the club to play with the minis, and they would learn. Your wife, maybe if she plays, would play with the women's team. You would play with the men's team. You would all go to the games. Every Saturday night you would go to support the men's team, the first team. And it's a lot more family. It's a lot more family oriented.
So it's not offered in the schools at all?
No, it's not. There are some clubs in the schools, but no, they've separated from the schools. And perhaps I've always said that it might be interesting to see because of, especially here on Long Island with the property taxes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know a large part of a school budget is devoted to sports. And that's the way people here like it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a dad's club in every high school.
Yeah.
And they're pushing for you know, the enlargement of the programs. And of course, the main justification is that they lead to, the sports leads to the scholarships.
Yes, it leads to scholarships here, and with the NCAA, which is good. It gets kids into school, but I really would prefer to see more of a club system introduced in the United States. I find that sports have taken over our culture in a way. They've become way too important. This is somebody who's actually was in the system
and
took advantage of
athlete.
who was a professional athlete with it for a while. I did make my living at it, but I would really like to see them go into more of a club system. And you have it now, I think, in fact, with the soccer teams in the United States. There's the New York City Athletic Club now, where they play at Yankee Stadium. They play soccer. I would really like to see if they could, if we can get a chance to perhaps move more into that and get away from the professionalism and the money, which is the cancer, I think, in sports. Unfortunately, there's a lot of money in it. And we can see now with the player salaries that it's just pretty much out of control. If I would have made the Denver Nuggets my first year in 1980, my rookie contract would have been $65,000. That's how much I would have been paid, and all rookies, pretty much were paid that in 1980. Now it's over $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, it is low.
Wow, what a tremendous leap that's taken.
Yeah.
It's become so, as you said, so big.
Yeah.
So big, so important.
So important, yeah.
Well, it's been wonderful talking with you, Jim.
Okay, yeah, it's been very nice as well.
I love your your very unusual views on
Yeah.
high school sports and clubs,
Yeah.
because I've often thought that I was not aware until I'd say maybe 20 years ago that one of the teachers in Farmingdale had visited Germany and came back and with the revelation that they don't have high school sports there,
Yeah.
and then it's all in this club system.
It's all in the club system.
And I think that is a fantastic thing too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's great to hear a professional athlete who's sharing that view.
Yes.
Jim, I want to thank you. It's been such a great thing to see you.
Okay.
I'm so happy. I'm so proud of you as a Farmingdale High School teacher.
Okay.
And not only for your accomplishments in sport, but also because you're down to earth and in great sense of what's right in the world and what's important in this world. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you.
Italian American sports heroes. Whatever sport you follow, there are Italian Americans who excel and rise to the top of the game. There are so many Italian American sports heroes, we can't name all of them in this brief segment, but here are a few of the most famous and notable. Let's start with Ed Abaticchio, the first Italian American to play professional baseball using his real Italian name. Up until 1897, Italian American athletes in all sports Americanized their names to be more recognizable and more easily spoken by Americans. Ed changed all that and played in the 1909 World Series. Continuing with baseball, perhaps most famous is Joe DiMaggio, but we all know Phil Rizzuto, Yogi Berra, and Roy Campanella, whose father was Italian. Joe Pepitone, Mike Piazza, and Long Island's own Craig Biggio are also famous names. Tommy Lasorda and Tony La Russa are hailed as great baseball team managers. In football, who can forget the great Vince Lombardi? Dan Marino and Joe Montana also share Italian ancestry, as do Nick Buonaconti and Brian Piccolo, who was immortalized in the film Brian's Song. In basketball, Jim Valvano was not only a terrific coach, but also an inspiring person. Our own Jim Graziano from Farmingdale, Long Island, made his mark in the EuroLeague for almost 25 years. And so many other varieties of sports, Italian Americans are well known. In bodybuilding, Lou Ferrigno won many awards, and who can forget the 98-pound weakling ads? That's right, Charles Atlas was of Italian heritage. In boxing, we have the two Rockies, Marciano and Graziano. In wrestling, the great Bruno Sammartino is known to all. In golf, Ken Venturi has taken many trophies home, and in tennis, Jennifer Capriati has done the same. If you like bowling, you know Carmine Salvino. If you like auto racing, you know Mario Andretti. If you like to play the ponies, you're familiar with Eddie Arcaro, the legendary jockey. In many other minor sports, Italian Americans are also famous. Brian Boitano is one of the great figure skaters. Willie Mosconi is probably the most famous billiard player there ever was. Phil Esposito is known for his achievements in hockey. Finally, Louis Zamperini was a champion Olympic runner and the subject of the book and movie Unbroken for his experiences in World War II. Whatever sport you play or watch, Italian Americans are sure to be some of the best in the game.